Okay, there we go. All right. So, the first question that we have. Oh, okay, hold on. Some tech issues over here. Hmm. Okay, here we go. So the first question that we have here is: do you think police brutality is an important issue in the United States right now?
Absolutely, especially with there being a growing number of abuses of police authority. Um, the one thing about police departments is a lot of people don't realize it's a public service department. It's not a government agency. So these are not government elected officials. These are not people that are elected by citizens to provide this service to the community. So they have a certain amount of rules and regulations that they can impose, but unfortunately, we see again a acting outside of their authority that's being delegated to them by city agents. So, of course, when it comes to people being shot in the back of the head or even being shot multiple times when they're unarmed is excessive. And again, under the protective services that are provided to police departments, they're able to, unfortunately, get away with murder, so to speak. For instance, with the Police Bill of Rights, this is actually an additional Bill of Rights that exists for police officers. So, as we, the people, citizens, have the Bill of Rights under the United States Constitution, which many of us are aware of. But what we are unaware of is that the police departments have their own Bill of Rights, which again gives them an opportunity for immunity, which leads to another a protective layer for police officials is there is something called qualified immunity, which is a policy that basically allows them to make a mistake and get away with it. So, for instance, if a police officer, uses excessive force and is found by a jury to be guilty, or they can get away with it thanks to qualified immunity. Because if it's argued that the police officer was, protected by qualified immunity, then again, they would be excused from that action. So I believe right now, with the growing concerns of abuses of authority by police officers, there needs to be some bit of reform. And that's what a lot of people are demanding, especially with the calls for defunding the police that you hear from, I guess the Black Lives Matter movement, et cetera. But when it comes to defunding the police, it's a matter of how much money is being spent on them in general. And a lot of taxpayer dollars are being funneled into our police departments, especially when it comes to these, police abuses of police authority. When it leads to someone's injury, whether it be that they're alive or they're dead, those lawsuit settlements come out of taxpayer pockets. So it's going to come out of your pockets when you're working, and all of your tax dollars that are collected goes towards paying those lawsuit settlements instead of it coming out of police officers' pockets themselves. So as a candidate for governor, I'm proposing to have police officers carry liability insurance. That way, whenever there is, any abuse of power, that they're paying for that injury out of their own pockets instead of, again, coming out of your pockets. So these are ways that we can, again, reform our police department and just increase the amount of accountability. That's mainly what people of the community are wanting from these people that are being hired by us to provide protective services. That's mainly what it is. And if they aren't doing that in a way to where we feel safe, then we need to reevaluate where we're spending our money and how it's being used, because that's really all it boils down to. They don't work for us. I mean, we don't work for them. They work for us. So if we're going to continue to pay their salaries with our money, then they have to adhere to our demands. Also, militarization of the police departments is another waste of taxpayers' dollars, because they're spending money on heavy artillery and basically arming themselves in a way to where they're even more threatening to people of the community. In the Constitution, it says that we shouldn't have any standing armies in the United States of America. And if you look at the police departments nationwide, they're as large as some armies in other countries. I mean, even in the state of California, we have hundreds of thousands of police officers, but really the main law enforcers of the land that are government officials are sheriff's departments. So we need to be making sure that our sheriff's departments are holding our police departments accountable and so forth. But it all starts first with the governor.
Awesome. I well, you actually hit a lot of the questions that we were going
He
to.
answered like 5 questions in one statement. I was
Yeah. All right. Well, Jonathan, you can
Do my
ask the
best to
next
be as
one.
informative as possible.
Yeah.
well.
Um,
The next question I would like to ask is what's your opinion on the Black Lives Matter movement?
You mean just in general or recent activity?
In general.
In general, I believe the Black Lives Matter movement has a purpose. It's basically a call to action by those people that have been abused by police officers, or those people that see it as being a hindrance on others in the community, including themselves. I myself being one of them. I am a police abuse survivor. So I, of course, without a doubt, understand the need to call the need for police reform. But when it comes to the Black Lives Matter organization and the founders and their principles with regards to, I guess, Marxism and socialism and how we should be conducting ourselves politically as a society, that I disagree with wholeheartedly. We still are a constitutional republic, and that's for a reason. And that's because we don't want democratic rule, which is basically majority rule. That means that if 99% of the people say one person, which is you, the individual, should not do something, or want to restrict you in some way from exercising a human right, a natural right, then they'd be able to do so. Well, we don't have that. Thankfully, here in the United States, we have a constitutional republic which protects you as the individual and all your natural rights, your inalienable rights that should never be violated. And that's where the protection layer of protection comes into play when it comes to government officials and the type of policies that they like to enforce upon you, the individual. So I think as a community, we should be looking to the message of Black Lives Matter, which is, again, the call to demand action for reform in our police departments, as something that we should be responding to, because it does harm all of us, not just Black people, but brown people, Asian people, white people, every person, especially the taxpayer, which is every person. We all pay taxes, and even you younger people are paying taxes. When you buy something, you're paying sales tax. And once you start school and start work, you're going to be paying even more taxes. If you start a business, you're going to be paying even more taxes. So you are the financier of government and everything that they do. And again, when it boils down to public services, which are something that are being provided to the community by police departments, what's given them the monopolization over our protective services in the community are police unions. So we have to rely upon one group of people to provide protective services to us. Now that's a conflict because if there's ever any, any conflict with them or any issue, we won't be able to go outside of that agency to, find someone else to provide those protective services for us. And we actually see that happening with private communities, gated communities or banks where they have, private protection companies and private security. And I believe that would be the free market solution to, providing better protective services when it comes to police. Now, with regards to what we should be doing as a community to bring that to fruition, is of course, first and foremost, support candidates such as myself, that are running for positions in office to make those changes immediately, as a governor would be able to do, but also continue to hold those government officials that you do get placed into office accountable, because they do have a job to do. And if they fail to do that job, then you should be calling them out on that. That's exactly what we've been able to do here in California by collecting enough signatures to recall Governor Gavin Newsom here, because he did sign a law actually to reform the criminal justice system here in California. And it's called the Stephon Clark Law, which was actually named after a Black man that was shot and killed in his grandparents' backyard in 2018. The police officers believed he had a gun in his hand when really he had a cell phone. So he was shot and killed unarmed for no reason at all. Now, the police officers that shot and killed him are still on the force. The police chief, of course, who's the one responsible and in charge of his police officers, it kept his job, and so did the district attorney, who's now running for an office, a state office here as well. So attorney general, believe it or not. So these people are staying in positions of power where they're able to promote themselves. No change is happening, and the buck stops with the governor. So if Gavin Newsom, hasn't done anything to rein in the amount of police shootings of civilians since the signing of this law, then he has failed when it comes to, holding police officers accountable. And since he signed this bill into law, the Stephon Clark Law, and this happened in, I believe, August of 2019, there's been over 100, 200 officer involved shootings in the state of California. So that's just awful. Any loss of life when it comes to government officials is a tremendous loss to the community, because they have a responsibility over everyone else to protect us. And if they are failing at that job, then we, of course, need to be reconsidering how they are performing.
Awesome. Thank you. Matisse, if you want to ask the next question.
Yeah. If given the opportunity, would you defund the police?
Somewhat, yes. I believe, again, government wastes a lot of our tax dollars, whether it be on police, whether it be on, welfare services, whether it be on community services. They waste a lot of money. Just look at what's happened with cleaning up our streets with the homeless. Over the past year, Gavin Newsom spent nearly $1 billion supposedly to clean up the streets and provide homes for the unhoused people. But how many of you still see homeless encampments in your neighborhood? So money being thrown at the problem clearly hasn't addressed it. So if anything, I believe that government should operate on a smaller budget, even government officials themselves, which is why I'm offering to do the job for a smaller amount of money. The current governor gets paid almost $200,000 a year basically just to be a supervisor. And the median income in California is around $60,000. I believe the governor should get paid around that and nothing more, as well as every other state official. So if we cut all state officials' salaries to $60,000, we're cutting a lot of money being wasted on government officials. Money that could be going towards improving our educational system, which right now a lot of focus is not being done on, especially with this whole pandemic panic, which has devastated our educational system. You have a lot of students that don't want to return to school because of it, and those in school have a problem with being there because of how uncomfortable it is being there. So when it comes to our police department and how much money is being spent on them, as I said, if we impose a mandate on them having to carry liability insurance, to where if there's a police shooting, they're paying for that out of their own pockets. That lawsuit settlement comes out of their own pockets. When it comes to their pensions, all state officials receive a pension for the rest of their life. If you guys don't know this is basically like a $100,000 yearly payment to these state officials for the rest of their life. So after they retire, they collect this pension, and it comes out of my pocket, it comes out of your pocket, it comes out of our kids' pockets and their kids' pockets. It comes out of we the people's pockets. So that's something that I don't believe that we should be doing as a community, is providing a safety net for somebody that provides a community service for the rest of their life. It should be all of our responsibility to set up our own savings and take care of our own retirement funds on our own. And if any job were to provide that type of benefit, it should be in the private sector, not the public sector. So we definitely need to rein in our pension costs, which is what I'll be doing also as governor, which I'm pretty sure may upset a lot of state employees, but we'll make the taxpayers happy. And also what I said, a lot of money being used on militarizing our police, having them carry around heavy artillery and driving around and, tanks and Hummers and MRAPs and all types of military vehicles that belong on battlefields instead of on, neighborhood streets in our state. They don't belong. So we need to make sure that we make a shift in funding immediately, and make sure the officers that are providing a great service to the community are well paid. I believe that the median income for officers should be about $100,000. Even they should be getting paid more than me, the state official providing the service as governor, because they are providing a greater service to the community. So because of that, they should be well compensated. But if they want to earn any extra money, whether it be overtime or whatever, it should be based on them providing more services to the community, like weapons training to those people that may, own a weapon and would like to be trained by a professional. There's no reason why that should not be a free service provided to the community by law enforcement. So I believe that's another way for them to earn their money as well. Yes, I believe that there needs to be some defunding of the police, but when it comes to a complete and utter, disbandment of them altogether, I think that would be irrational, especially right now with there being no other idea in place to replace that. I do believe that community policing can play a role in that, but there needs to be a matter of responsibility increased among the community for people to pick up that responsibility.
Right. Awesome. Well, the next question that we have actually involves a lot of what you said there, And that one is, how long should a police officer's training and education be, in your opinion?
I believe it should be equivalent to any other, college degree. What, 2 years, 4 years for a bachelor's degree. So if anyone wants to work as a law enforcement officer, you should be trained at least 2 to 4 years before going out on the streets, before being given a badge, instead of these 6-month programs that they are having, even for the sheriff's department, even because there's a lot that goes into providing that service, other than just giving the person a gun and delegating them with a certain amount of responsibilities. They need to know how to interact with people, different types of people. They need to know how to de-escalate certain situations, whether it be the person be armed or the person may be dealing with a mental health issue. you know these are different types of responsibilities that unfortunately fall on their shoulders, and why I believe that other type of community services would help provide some bit of support to them, like mental health professionals going out and providing assistance for someone that may be having a mental health breakdown. Um, Also, when it comes to someone that may be dealing with drug abuse, having, drug abuse professionals instead, rehabilitative services respond to those calls instead of police officers. So, but if police officers are trained in how to work with those type of organizations, those type of groups, then now we're bettering the type of response that they're having altogether. And it's a benefit to us as a community because it's a law, it leads to a lesson of loss of life. And that's really what we want. We want to prevent people from being put in harm's way and being suspected as and treated as criminals when they indeed may not be, you know? So yeah, I definitely believe there needs to be more education when it comes to our police officers.
Awesome. Okay, Matthias, if you want to ask the other question.
What is something you agree or disagree with that the Democratic Party is doing about policing?
As I said, a complete dismantling and defunding of police agencies, because they do need a certain amount of money, of course, to operate. But if it's receiving state funding, that's something that I don't support, because police departments are hired locally. They're paid for by the city. So if a city itself chooses to defund the police, like Los Angeles chose to do, and use non-taxpayer revenue, generated revenue to pay for police departments, then that's their prerogative. And I think that's a great idea. Instead of, police departments being paid for by taxpayers directly, they're being paid for by other sources of revenue that's being generated by the government. But it's a matter of spending and using that money wisely. Um, and when it comes to a matter of, I guess, focusing on people that may have criminal past, criminal history, and creating policy that may be harmful to others in the community, like Prop 47. It's a bill that basically has helped a lot of people, because if you have committed a crime that has fallen under the category of it being a felony, it's difficult for those people to get their life back on track. But it also creates that opportunity for repeat offenders. And we definitely don't want that to happen, where someone feels as if they can continue to, do the same crime repeatedly and not have to be held accountable for their actions. So we want to shift that, make sure that the policies that are in place protect people of the community, and that they are strict enough to where people know that if you commit a crime, you're going to have to do the time for it, pretty much.
Hmm. And pretty much a similar question to that is, what's something you disagree or agree with that the Republican Party is doing about policing?
Um, that's actually a pretty good question because what the Republican Party has done, I would say, has put the people even in more danger with the policy changes. For instance, with the governor of Florida um, creating a policy to where there's an anti-rioting law. Now, while this may sound good and is aimed at preventing rioting in the city, there's already property rights laws that prevent that from happening. You know, you're of course not able to go out and vandalize property and destroy public property because you're going to have to pay for it. And criminal laws already exist to prevent that from happening. But to go a step further and to say that you may not act out in civil disobedience in a cause in response to doing so is threatening to everyone, not just Black Lives Matter, but every group and organization or individual that chooses to express civil disobedience. Now, um, for instance, right now is being considered to impose a vaccination passport upon everyone. Now, while you may have people that agree with that, you have a certain amount of people, such as myself, that argue against that and would protest against that. Now, if it led to, police going out and I guess declaring it to be an unlawful assembly and choosing to arrest us for exercising our right to protest, and others chose to be violent in their response to do so. And that's the thing. When it comes to government trying to suppress violence, laws already exist to do so, to suppress our First Amendment and our right to be civilly disobedient and protest against our government and whatever it does. They cannot tell us not to be violent in doing so. Those revolutionary acts is what started our country. So to tell us to not do that is to basically tell us that we need to adhere to any tyrannical behaviors that they may have and go through their own approved ways of rebellion in order to have some bit of a reform. But we've seen that happen. We've seen that not happen, despite how much we try to change the system through the system. We don't see any changes. So to tell us we cannot have a violent revolution is actually unlawful. If you look at the Declaration of Independence, it says that we have the right to overthrow our government if we don't like it. And that means by any means. So the protesters on January 6th that stormed the Capitol, as many may think that, they're
There we go. All right, sorry about that, but okay.
no problem. So yeah, as I was saying about the January 6th rioters, as much as I think, as I know, a lot of people may feel like, their actions were unnecessary. You also got to consider that um, that what they did was also in alignment with the spirit of rebellion that this country was founded on. So we shouldn't be limited in being able to express that when it comes to us being unhappy with our government. But some of the policies I believe that the Republican Party have introduced, unfortunately, to uh, I guess, what is it, reform the criminal justice system that they didn't support was to end no knock raids, actually. And this was introduced by Senator Rand Paul, who unfortunately didn't get the support from Black Lives Matter or the Republican Party, or the Democrats even, to get this bill passed. Justin Amash, Senator, or actually Congressman Justin Amash, when he was in office, one of the last things that he was pushing for was to end qualified immunity, which unfortunately didn't get support either. But had this been done on the federal level, this I believe would have completely reformed, police departments nationwide. But now it's being left up to cities and states to do individually. So we see this happening actually across the nation, where they're ending qualified immunity, they're ending police bill of rights, and I believe that's something that the state of California could benefit from as well, which is why I'm offering to do so as governor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we have two more questions left. Yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, so there has been a lot of talk about, instead of defunding the police, some people have mentioned disarming the police. So what is your opinion on all of that?
Well, I believe that police officers should be armed. I don't think they have to be armed like military personnel, as I said before, because that creates an even greater threat to people of the community. But when it comes to use of those arms, I think it needs to be a matter of life or death. And the last resort, especially Sacramento actually just made that law to where, deadly force is the last means that police officers are able to use. That's something that I would do on the state level, because I believe that, there's other ways to disarm an individual if they were trained properly to do so. But of course, that's a matter of them going through more training to de-escalate a situation and disarm people. But I believe also that when it comes to the amount of money that's being spent on these programs, again, we got to focus more so on how it's being spent. And a lot of times it's being misappropriated, it's being overspent, and more focus needs to be on that in particular at this time, especially when there isn't any accounting being done. But deadly force needs to be one of the last things that police officers, you know, are able to use. But I don't think they should be disarmed completely.
Awesome. Thank you. And Matthias, you want to ask that last question?
As governor, what would your message to other elected officials be in regards to policing?
To other elected officials, the only ones that would be responsible to police police departments, like I said, would be the sheriff. So I would make sure that the sheriffs across the state know that, hey, if you have a police department that's acting rogue, and you have other, government officials, like, as I said, the district attorneys or anyone such as that, not cooperating with upholding the law, because that's what this is all about, is them upholding the law. But what is the law? If it's a matter of them upholding their constitutional oath, that's the law of the land that comes first and foremost. And with that, they have a duty and responsibility to protect and serve the people that put them in that position. And they have an oath to uphold. So if they aren't going to uphold that oath, then they aren't fit for that position, and they themselves are committing a crime and should be arrested for doing so. That's what I'll be doing as governor, is making sure that every state official upholds their constitutional oath, and know that if they don't do so, they'll be suffering consequences, no matter what their position may be. because we all have a job here, and that's to, serve the people that, put us into position to serve them as public representatives. So if we aren't doing that job, the first thing, by upholding that oath, then we don't deserve to be in that position.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop recording right now.